right, welcome back. Let's get to these Final Four games. We'll have Yukon and Alabama in the night session. You will have Purdue and the unlikeliest of Final Four teams out of a Power 5 conference. NC State, who was 17-14, had to win 5 consecutive games in the ACC tournament. They were trailing to Louisville, who had like 6 wins all season in their first game on Tuesday. Yet the big fella DJ Burns and NC State are playing in the Final Four against the Purdue Boilermakers. So, House, let's start with the Yukon angle of this, because they're trying to do something we haven't seen since Billy Donovan's Florida Gators. They're trying to go back-to-back. We talked about this on our Monday pod, the idea of this being the year, potentially, of the back-to-back. We'll see if Yukon follows suit on that. But the insane thing about Yukon, if you go back to last year in this tournament, House, if you've been betting Yukon blindly, think about it. Round of 64-32, 16-8-4 championship. 64-32-16. They have covered 10 consecutive NCAA tournament games. 10. When is this streak going to end?
Not Saturday. I mean, this is the thing with this Yukon program. And you just hit it. I saw the same stat since 1979 when seeding was introduced into this tournament. The only team to win 10 consecutive against the spread and outright is Yukon. They have an incredible record in the tournament. They cover by double digits more than half of the time. And this particular version of them, it reminds me a little bit of the back-to-back Florida teams, right? Where you just had talent at a variety of positions, and they could beat you a variety of different ways. They can play slow, they can play fast, they can play physical, they can play finesse. They got all the bases covered. This is it for Alabama as far as I'm concerned. They had the benefit of going up against some teams and having those teams shoot the ball poorly. It doesn't matter with Yukon. The only intrigue that's left with Yukon is how high is this number going to go come Saturday morning.
Yeah, I just don't know how you can bet against this Yukon team. They've been holding teams throughout the tournament to 80 points per 100 possessions. When a defense is playing that well, when you can go on a 30-0 run, I just don't know how you step in front of that train. I think it's Yukon or pass. And honestly, I think you just have to pass on this game.
I don't know how you bet Bama. You nailed it, Raheem. Listen, I want to, full disclosure, bet Bama. I want to root for them. I'm sick and tired of Yukon. You know, House, it's interesting. I see where you're going from a talent and a skill position standpoint in the Florida comparison. I guess the only difference to me is you saw the big players on UConn's team last year say sayonara. So this is a lot of the guys who did not have major roles on that team. Some of them did, but you're seeing a new crop of Yukon player kind of emerge and be a part of this thing. And they've been maybe even more dominant than what they were a year ago. I think if you're going to play this game, guys, the total, it's at 160.5. And I know Alabama has a knack for hitting a ton of threes. We saw that, Raheem, in their game that they played against Clemson in the Elite Eight. They were just draining threes, shot after shot after shot. I know they like to play fast. UConn's one of those teams, they can play fast. They can play slow. They could do it a variety of different ways. I just think if you think UConn covers this number, they probably slow down pace a little bit. So I'm fairly confident in looking at this number and saying, all right, even if you don't want to go and lay 11.5, I think it's going under 160.5. Does your model put it that way or no?
Well, I don't have a college basketball
there you
model.
Go. I'm jumping the gun. I thought you had a model for everything.
Yeah.
I thought you had a model for cricket, to be honest. You never know.
But, I mean, one thing I will say is that Illinois, one of the top offenses in college basketball, we know Terrence Shannon has been absolutely dominant. They only scored 72 points per 100 possessions last week. And the pace was they played to a pace of 71 possessions. So, like I told you guys on Monday, I like the under. It was 161. It's down to 160.5. And I don't think that's low enough. So I would play the under here.
How, should you play the other?
I will put something on that. I have to have some action on Yukon here. I looked into the alt spread market, and I have an alt spread parlay that I'm playing to try and build something because the other leg of this involves NC State and Purdue. and I know we're going to talk about this game, but I have Yukon on an alt spread down to 8.5 because all they do is beat everybody by double digits. So I have to lay, some juice, but when you put it into the parlay, you get yourself up to plus odds on it.
When in doubt, you're not going to mess around with UConn. Totally understandable. Now, the other game you're going to have, it will be NC State, who has been a tournament darling, against a Purdue team that is very relieved to finally break through. Matt Painter has finally gotten to the Final Four. Edey was very emotional after the game, beating a very spunky, very tough Tennessee team. And they're a considerable favorite as well against the Wolfpack. Now, you might be able to see 9 in the market. You might see 8.5. You might see 9.5. This is going to fluctuate, I think, a little bit as we get closer to tip-off. House, I think Purdue's going to win the game. Let me make that clear. I think NC State's going to give them hell. I can't go against the juju that I've seen with this team where they are scratching, they are clawing. You look at some of the teams they've beaten. I mean, they whooped Marquette. They whooped Duke in the second half. The games weren't even close. They were able to deal with Texas Tech. I mean, you could argue the toughest game they've had in this NCAA tournament was against Oakland, for goodness sakes, in around 32. I'm seeing all those points. I can't imagine that Final Four Saturday is just going to be chalk city where both teams win by 15-plus points. To me, Purdue is the team that has far more trouble. And I like the fact that DJ Burns, I know Edey's a handful, and I know he can get anybody into foul trouble, and he doesn't foul. But that big man for NC State, he knows how to finish around the rack. He's got soft hands. He's an unbelievable passer. I think he goes out with a bang. House, I'm taking the Wolfpack. I think they cover the number.
Yeah, JJ, I share your view on this, and there isn't anything you can do in terms of drilling down into advanced metrics to come up with an explanation for how successful NC State has been. What they've done is found this heater they believe, and if we could find the advanced metric for belief, that's the one where they're number one in the nation right now. So the way I'm playing this, based on the way that you just articulated it, go ahead and give me NC State at a plus double-digit number. I can alt spread them up to plus.
Oh, this is the alt spread that you're referencing. So you're gonna you're fooling around with this. Okay,
it's a parlay. Okay. So I have NC State up to 12.5 because I agree with the idea that ultimately I think Purdue will win, but I do think it's going to be tight. And so I have NC State plus 12.5 matched up with Yukon minus 8.5. And the FanDuel Sportsbook parlay come bob you later plus 132. That's a way that fits my mind's eye. You know what I mean?
I might ride that with you. In fact, that's not a might. That's a will. I will be riding with you. Done. I'm in. Raheem, we're in on the Wolfpack. What do we think about this game?
So the thing that concerns me is that NC State is not a deep team. And we know Zach Edey. He tends to draw a lot of fouls. This is not a team where if you get into foul trouble, I think they can be into trouble. And you got to remember, Purdue was just 3 of 15 from behind the arc last week against Tennessee. And they still covered that number and won by 6. If the threes are falling, Purdue could just send this team home early. So I don't know if I'm going to play Purdue at 9.5, but it just feels like this is going to be a chalky tournament. So that's where I'm leaning.
Well, and let me say this. If we get UConn and Purdue on Monday night, I think Purdue is live in the game. I do. They got a lot of veterans. They got Edey. And you hit on something that I think is important here, Raheem. This game on Saturday, really the way the officials let this one go, it may determine whether or not you get that cover or not. If you get a game in which they're letting the boys play a little bit, they're letting them bang down low, because of the lack of depth that you're going to find from an NC State perspective, yeah, I think it's more likely, hey, they're calling it tight, advantage Purdue. If they're letting them play, advantage NC State. Listen, NC State's been good to me. I'm riding one last time. I don't think they're going to win the game, but I'm just not going to come on here and give you both favorites. That's no fun. Now, let's get to the ladies, guys. The ladies' games. House, I was into them on Monday, man. I had the baseball going. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I am some expert. Listen, I mean, when it comes to all of this, we're all a bunch of morons when it really comes down to it, except for Raheem. Raheem, I'll put you in a different stratosphere. Us knuckleheads could go elsewhere. House, you got Caitlin Clark against UConn. And that line, I almost feel as if they're begging you to bet Iowa laying 2.5. And I can't believe I'm saying this because normally I don't know much about the ladies' game except for the fact that Yukon is dominant and that Yukon usually wins year after year. Dude, you give me 2.5 with Yukon, I'm taking it, man. I'm taking it. I'm going against the LeBron of the women's college tournament, or Steph Curry, I should say. The Steph Curry of the women's college tournament. But give me Yukon. Let's be different.
I understand your perspective on this, and I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to observe that the women's games Monday night, the results of the broadcast, over 12 million viewers.
That's so great. Good for them, man.
Wow.
Fantastic. And I was one of them.
That's right.
Count me in.
Now, I'm not going to advance a conspiracy theory. I'm just going to observe out loud that an Iowa-South Carolina matchup in the women's national title game might garner north of that $12 million.
Because that would be on Tuesday night too.
I think right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it would be on an island, all of America watching. America clearly loves Caitlin Clark. That's the only reason that I will say to you, because I will say, thankfully, I invested in Yukon Monday night. I came on our podcast on Monday and made an impassioned case for LSU over Iowa. And by golly, LSU did everything that I expected them to do. They were more physical. They out-rebounded the hell out of the basketball. They got nearly 15 more shots up than Iowa. The problem is nobody can make a bucket. And on top of that, they thought they could single-team Caitlin Clark. I'll leave those complaints to the side and just say, great job by Yukon. They are exactly 6 deep. And if any of those young ladies get in foul trouble, their bench is in trouble. You could see they have an all-star team sitting on their bench in injury reps. They have an unbelievable team, but a whole bunch of injuries. So I just like the idea. And I will tell you, I went ahead and did this as well. If you play Iowa minus the 2.5 and put that together with South Carolina on the money line, minus 101 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Even money for the game that I think the nation would like to see.
Interesting. Raheem, any interest or will you be backing any of these ladies' games on Sunday night?
I'm probably not going to be backing any of these teams, but I think if I'm just looking at pure power ratings, it feels like this line is wrong. It feels like Connecticut should be favored in this game. So I probably would fade the public if I had to do anything and take Connecticut plus 2.5 or Connecticut on the money line plus 126 right now on FanDuel Sportsbook. But I don't have a strong opinion.
Wow. So I'm getting your blessing on this Yukon play. I'm getting your blessing on the Yukon play. Listen, great thing for college basketball this weekend. You got the men doing their thing on Saturday. And I love the fact that they have these games Sunday in the evening. Job well done, ESPN. Do not bury them at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Going to have a nice weather day for the first time in forever in New York. So maybe I'll actually be outside, get a run in, get a little tennis in, watch some baseball. And then at night, I can kind of hunker down and get ready for all the festivities with the ladies. Then Caitlin Clark taking on Yukon. I mean, it's one hell of a Final Four storyline, House. That's good, man. What was it, 12 million watching those games the other night? That's
12.3 million. Now, I will say this. I don't want to steal his thunder. This is a Cousin Sal special. One of the things that he's been pointing us towards is a Yukon parlay. And I don't know if you want to do it, Yukon on the money line with the women, parlayed with Yukon on the men.
Oh, the Yukon.
Yeah, Yukon. The
double.
Yukon double.
The double whammy.
Yes, exactly. Stores Connecticut in the house. If you want to just do the money lines together, that's plus 154. Yukon to beat Iowa outright on the women's side, and the men just have to win against Alabama, plus 154 in the FanDuel Sportsbook.
Let's take this a step further, because right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, they have Final Four specials. And they had the Connecticut men's and women's basketball teams to win both the 2024 national championship that pays plus 1130 right now.
Wow, that's a good number because I guess they're assuming that the winner of Iowa Yukon would be a pretty big dog against South Carolina. That's got to be why we're getting that, Raheem, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because, I mean, you look at South Carolina right now, they're like a 12-1 favorite against. So, I mean, it's South Carolina at the end of the day.
Hey, go big or go home. That's what we do here on East Coast Bias. All right, we come back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Joel Embiid back for the Philadelphia 76ers. Play. Does that change your potential outlook of Philadelphia? Is it maybe worth pursuing some buy low opportunities on the Sixers for the next few weeks and come playoff time? We'll dive in. We got a lot more to do. Coming right back.